Hello, dailyfantasycafe.com goers. Welcome back to Daily Academy. I am your professor for today's course, and that's undergraduate course rosters. And I am Josh Shepardson, also known as @Beachhead50 on Twitter. And if you've checked out the scoring section of the undergrad course, you'll probably not be surprised to learn that in addition to scoring differences between websites, there's also roster differences between websites. There are numerous daily fantasy sports sites out there, but the big two are FanDuel and DraftKings, obviously, and they're going to be the focus of this undergraduate course. Just looking at those two sites side by side really illustrates the difference in rosters, and differences in rosters means the world to daily gamers. Some sites, depending on the rosters available there, the restrictions can prevent certain tactics at one site while allowing for them at others. They can also somewhat stifle creativity. We'll put it that way. By limiting the certain positions that you can use. We'll open up with the NBA, for example. DraftKings rosters consist of 8 players. They must include players from at least 2 different NBA teams and representing at least 2 different real NBA games. So basically, this prevents gamers from using all of one roster, for instance, and their positions also, the positions specifically are 8 roster positions of point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center, a guard that can be either a point guard or shooting guard, a forward that can be a small forward or power forward, and a utility position that can be used on anyone. FanDuel is slightly different. FanDuel offers 2 point guards, 2 shooting guards, 2 small forwards, 2 power forwards, and a center. The first thing you'll notice probably is that there's no utility position, so you can only use one center on FanDuel rosters. Also, there's no guard or forward positions on FanDuel, which means that you are restricted to using 2 of each position. There's a little bit less flexibility there. Those rosters are 9 deep as opposed to 8 deep at DraftKings, which creates another interesting dynamic, and is important when you're constructing rosters. Basically, again, you can't use one standard format for constructing winning rosters. You need to know the differences in rosters and in order to be a profitable daily gamer. And understanding these before you make deposits and play for real money at these daily fantasy sports is very important, because certain sites' lineup constructions may be more appealing to you. There are also certain days that you may find that you like a lot of value at position, and one site will allow you a greater opportunity to exploit that advantage. So knowing these roster differences is huge. They extend beyond the NBA. MLB also has different roster constructions between sites. DraftKings rosters consist of 10 players, and they must include hitters from at least 3 different Major League Baseball teams. The 10 roster positions are as follows: pitcher, catcher, first base, which is also home to designated hitters, second base, third base, shortstop, and 3 outfield positions. There is no utility position like there is in the NBA games. Conversely, on FanDuel, you only use 1 pitcher, a catcher, first base, second base, third base, shortstop, and 3 outfield. So the most notable difference is that there is only 1 pitcher utilized on FanDuel compared to 2 on DraftKings, and that's quite the sizable distinction between roster formats, because pitching tends to be king in many aspects in daily fantasy baseball. And there are going to be certain days that there are numerous pitchers that are appealing to you, where it might be worthwhile to play more on DraftKings that day. And there are other days where you may be having trouble picking out which pitchers you'd like, and FanDuel's 1 pitcher format will appeal to you. You'll also notice differences in scoring as a result of of the different rosters, and basically experimenting with rosters and finding out what you're comfortable with is very important in daily fantasy baseball, like it is in daily fantasy basketball or any other daily fantasy sport. So understanding these differences is big. One difference that matters more in baseball than in any other sport is the restrictions based on teams and number of games. FanDuel only allows you to use 4 players from one team, which basically really limits stacking, which is a strategy that we'll cover more in depth in later courses in the Daily Academy. But in short, a big part of the stacking strategy is exploiting the fact that if one team is favored to win in a game with a high Vegas run total, the more players you can get from that team, the more likely you're going to score a lot. DraftKings is less restrictive because the only restriction is that you have to use hitters from at least 3 different Major League Baseball teams. You can conceivably use 6 hitters from the exact same team. So there's definitely more stacking potential at DraftKings, which will appeal to some gamers. It won't appeal to others. Some may choose to play FanDuel because they don't like stacking. Others may choose to play DraftKings more frequently because they like the idea of stacking and they don't like being as restrictive. So important distinction between both sites, and something that really is important to baseball mostly. The roster restrictions in terms of having to mix up players from different rosters, it does extend to other sports, but it isn't as important there as it is here. The last sport that we're going to cover in today's course is the NFL. Rosters at DraftKings include 9 players. Again, they have to include players from 2 different NFL teams representing 2 different football games. The roster positions are quarterback, running back 1, running back 2, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, tight end, and a flex position. The flex can be used for a running back, wide receiver, or another tight end, and a defense and special teams unit. FanDuel's positions include quarterback, running back 2, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and wide receiver 3, a tight end, defense, special teams, and no kicker. And a kicker, I'm sorry. DraftKings does not have a kicker, which is a notable difference, and FanDuel does not utilize a flex position, so that is immediately a glaring difference between scoring formats. Some people do not like the volatility provided by kickers because they are basically very difficult to project from a fantasy scoring standpoint. So for some, they would like to eliminate that volatility by playing at DraftKings. For others, they like the volatility being added in. Maybe they don't like the idea of using a flex. FanDuel is going to be more appealing to you. So that is a big difference between roster formats that is basically unique to the NFL. You don't see position completely omitted in other sports, but in the NFL, DraftKings has done away with the kicker, and FanDuel conversely has not. So before you make your deposits, before you start playing in daily fantasy games, it's best to know the rosters. Perhaps play in some of the free games available at these sites to see how you like the roster constructions and restrictions at each site. And know that if you want to make money long-term playing daily fantasy sports, it's imperative that you understand the difference between rosters at each site and the differences in strategy that come with each of those. So that's going to wrap things up for the rosters course of the undergraduate section of Daily Academy. It's been a pleasure having you on listening, and check back for great content here to help you win in your daily fantasy sports games. Take care.